Hey everyone, welcome to the ROI Estimators. So there's a few things in here that we're gonna get into, and I wanna just right away say, we are not CPAs, and all this information is just based on what we've pulled from top sites like Airbnb for comparables, and also from my personal uses of spreadsheets, and also what my tax advisor provides to me at the end of the year that matches to his software program. So you're gonna see there's kind of three parts here. There's the comparables, which is the first place to start. So you can kind of get an idea of what your house is capable of doing. And then there's a spreadsheet, an Excel sheet that you can fill out that will kind of covers, basically all the write-offs you can do. I mean, I have my own categories, but they're set up based on the main things that you can write off, and this is how I like to track my items. And then so I'll take this at the end of the year and I will give it to my CPA, and then he'll plug it into his software, which is that third spreadsheet that is essentially a copy of what he uses. But yours could be completely different, depends on what state you're in. It depends, there are some things that are national, but just be sure to always check with your CPA. But I hope these tools will help you get an idea of whether it's your own home or you're buying a new home, and also what kind of things to just always make sure you keep track of, because having write-offs on an income property is key to save on your taxes. And you also need to be legal. So we always stress that. Be legal and make sure you get good advice from professionals. So hopefully this spreadsheet helps you out, and these forms, so that you can get a little clearer understanding on your STR project. Welcome to the ROI Estimator that we talk about so much in this course. This is a tool for you to use to kind of estimate whether you are buying a new house or you have your own home, and also just some basic tax write-offs and expenses and things that you should always keep track of. So, as we always disclose, we are not CPAs, we're not tax advisors. This is just what we've used as our tools, and this is a tool. So we're gonna give you a little breakdown of some things that we suggest that you should always check out before you get into a new STR or even start your own STR. So a lot of this is not just from us, but it's also from Airbnb and things that we pulled. So let's start with part one, because there's about three parts. The first part's gonna be this revenue estimator, and then we're going to go into the Excel kind of budget sheet for your expenses, and then just kind of a basic overview of what you can typically expect from your CPA. And we always suggest that you have a good CPA. I mean, you can do your taxes on your own, but if you're going to have income property or multiple income properties, it's really good to have a good CPA/tax advisor. So, okay, let's start here with the revenue estimator. So this is part one. So you want to find 10 comparable properties. You have to, especially if you're just getting into this, you need to find out what is your property worth, what are other properties in your neighborhood getting, how high are their ratings. So this is kind of a nice little checklist. So research the STRs that have similar qualities. So this is huge. So it has to be, kind of a similar location, but also, square footage, bedrooms, amenities, and you can go on to all these sites and find out all this information. So that is definitely the first thing. So as we get into these top 10 here, let's just go with number one, location. So we all know location is extremely critical. So if you're by a beach, you're in downtown, you're just close to cool stuff, and that's going to be in demand. So as we say here, this is one of the most significant items to compare. It's definitely a big factor, and will definitely have a significant impact on your profitability on your STR. So make sure that and it doesn't need to be in a city. It could be in the out in the forest or anything, but it just needs to have a cool location. Then you get into demand. So this is similar to location, but can be very specific. So we're here in LA, so we have events and conferences and things that people come out for specifically. So that is one thing, unique design, a special theme, anything that creates more demand because you have the only or the coolest place. That's always good. Bedrooms and baths. This is big because it depends on, if you're open to host, small or large groups and families with children, pets, because, allowing pets, you can make a lot more money. You'll see in Brittany's video too. And obviously large groups, but you don't want to overextend the capacity of your house, and maybe you're allergic or you don't want pets and those kind of things. So yeah, cooking, bathing are critical. Everybody wants a nice kitchen and a nice bathroom and nice towels and those kind of things. So, and obviously a good mattress to sleep on. And then total square footage. So this is also how, when you get your permit, you have to, talk to the city and find out how many parking spaces you need and depending on your square footage and how many guests you're going to have. So, and then also, is there a yard? Is there a private yard, an outdoor space? I mean, that's huge, because some people only rent these places, or your place, hopefully, to accommodate outdoor events, family gatherings, and important stuff like that. And then, so number 5, we get into year and conditioning of home. So this is a big one because there is a wide range. So, if you have an older home, there may be several things you need to upgrade and improve before it is comparable to a modern home. So, in this course, what we're trying to share is that you can make your house more modern, you can do little tweaks, or maybe you're just buying a second home. So it's really important to decide all these details here. Updated heating, style of appliances, is it a Instagram ready house that people are going to want to come stay at and get influencers at and all that kind of stuff. And then efficiency of utilities is really important because you will be responsible right here for everything. So keep that in mind, because if you don't have good, if you're on all electrical, or if you have gas and electric, or whatever the home is, you pay the utilities. So that comes out of your pocket. So this is a way that'll cut into your net income. So it'll be part of your gross, but it's going to come out of your pockets. So if you can get like a tankless water heater, or AC is a big thing, but maybe it doesn't make sense if it's a smaller little project to do that. So keep that in mind. And then we got amenities, and this is a big one. So right here, this is a big one. So you can add a lot of amenities. You can add a hot tub, you can add a pool, you can add fountains, and you can add, crazy bathrooms and stuff. It really depends on what your expectations are, but just keep in mind that people do love amenities. So if this is being designed as mostly a short-term rental, then amenities are critical. And I would highly suggest fireplaces, fire pit. People like hot tubs if you're in a seasonal town. I mean, swimming pools, that's kind of borderline, but I mean, it might pay for your swimming pool after 5 or 10 years, just by having it there. So, but to definitely have modern appliances, and absolutely have nice bedding and good furniture, because, people are going to complain unless you're doing something, really basic, but those are things that your guests will definitely be checking out. So, and then we get into entertainment, and this is another big one. So we've mentioned, having great Wi-Fi is really critical, because everything's Wi-Fi now. So all the TVs and everyone that shows up with their, iPhones and iPads and everything else, and work from home. And so if you have that, there are a lot of ways to go about it, but find the best system, but make sure that you have a really good service and that it's easy, whether you're managing it on your own or you're using a property management company, to be able to handle any problems. Because if your Wi-Fi goes down, and I understand that sometimes there's power outs and things like that, but if your Wi-Fi goes down or you're not paying your bill or it's not fast enough, people are going to be mad. So you see here, people will definitely pay more and search for places that have entertainment they're looking for. So then maintenance. So you want to find places that are maintained in a similar way as your property, or a property that you're thinking of buying, like landscape, gardening, outdoor space, everything. So just think of this, the perfect little world that you would put out there. And I highly recommend to look into Pinterest and even go on Airbnb. This is the whole point. Search your properties, like point number one, and just see what people are doing and who's getting the most bookings, because you can do a lot with some simple things, but it'll make a huge difference in your bookings when you have more of those types of amenities. And you just have to maintain everything. You have to have a landscaper, you have to have a property manager if you're not doing it on your own. Make sure nothing breaks down. Okay, so to conclude, choose 10 properties based on your zip code and all the details we listed. And then, find their average nightly rate and see, just get an idea of what it's capable. Because if people aren't making a lot of money in your area and you're going to dump a bunch of money in it, you don't want to do that. So if your neighbors or in your area are making really good nightly rates, then it's probably a good idea. And how many nights are you gonna? Is this a second property, or is this a kind of use it when it's not booked property kind of thing? So we have a bunch of classes about that. And so here's just like random. We just kind of threw this together. Average nightly rates. Let's say one night you get 400, next night you get 500, next night you get 350, blah, 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 all the way down, it's like, and then you divide it and then you come up with a scenario. So it's never going to be the same amount you're never going to get the same rate every night. And it's actually not smart to do that, because you can really capitalize on holidays and vacations and all these other ways to maximize your income. And you'll get return guests too, and can do special deals with them and whatnot. But this is just like a really simple way to kind of break down, do like a 12-month scenario of what you think with your area and what stuff goes for there and things like that. So this is just a good starting point of what your potential is for this new project. And whether it's a new project or it's your current house and you just want to rent a room out, all this stuff applies. So download this. We have it as a PDF to download, and you can always use this as a checklist, and we'll go from there. So the next, after this, we'll jump into this is an Excel sheet, okay? So I created this myself, and what I like to do, and again, this is not like, I can't guarantee this is the perfect way to do this, but I've been doing this my own form because I know how my tax advisor, CPA, works. And I created this spreadsheet because it's very simple. So I just type in, this is the address, there's the square footage, the current market value, the bedrooms, baths, the year it was built, and the current year, my STR license number over here. And we just kind of get into all of the items that typically you can expense. So there's certain stuff that's fixed with federal, but state by state, there might be some differences. So again, you really have to do your research. But for us in California and several homes that we have been, created into STRs and currently run, this is what I use. So I like to just keep it simple. And so this category and this will be downloadable also. It's an Excel file, but it should be available in some different formats in case you don't have Excel. It's just a spreadsheet and it works really easy. And these numbers are just kind of numbers I threw out there. It's going to be different for everyone. If you have a new house, you're going to have more construction related items here. And obviously I like to have like invoice numbers. You want to know how you paid it, how much it was, and then you have kind of a full tally here on each of them throughout the year. So some years you might not use anything. Like here, I have architectural interior design. There's nothing. But here I got my annual STR permit, which you're gonna need to pay every year. And then I have, there was some touch-ups on the bathroom. There's, some pickup work and things. And then I added some fixtures. I added some furniture here to make the place a little nicer. And then this is the one that you really got to keep track of, because like we said earlier, you have to pay for all of the electric, internet, water, sewer, garbage. All utilities are on you. So this stuff is going to be consistent throughout the year for you to pay. So you have to really keep track of that. And that's why it's really good to have a really efficient STR, because this stuff will never end and it's all going to go on your bill. And then you have subscriptions. It's always nice to have like a magazine subscription, like Dwell Magazine's always nice. And then this is a subscription for the security cameras that we talked about, that you should definitely have security cameras at your home. You can't have them inside. I mean, you can for your own, but when people are there, you can't. But outside, you should definitely have some security cameras. And Blink is a good one. Amazon sells, it's pretty cheap. You can get a nice floodlight that has the camera already on it for around $100. That's a really good one. And then you're gonna, depending on if you have a lawn or anything else like that, you're gonna have landscaping costs. These are kind of compiled, like this fee here was probably like 3 months of landscaping. Typically it can be, it depends how big your property is, but 50 to maybe, I don't know, $50, $60, $70 once or 2 or 3 times a week. It depends on how often you do it. And then house cleaning. So I put this line in here, and this is important because typically on Airbnb, or like any short-term rental site, Vacasa, or like anyone, they're gonna basically take a cleaning fee. But if you're running it yourself, they might not charge the fee, and then that might be on you. So if you're booking this out yourself and not using a third party like an Airbnb, you need to know what that price is, because that's going to be baked in, and that is just critical. I mean, we have a whole course about it you'll see coming up, and house cleaning is just something that you cannot, you got to have good house cleaning. And again, like we said here, it just depends if you're doing it yourself or have somebody else, but you have to have a good house cleaning. So, and then this is just random, so let's say you bought a second home and it's not your home and it's just totally an Airbnb, and you're doing it as an investment, and you have a mortgage payment, right? Well, rates are actually higher than this now. I think they're getting close to 8%, and this will always change. But just to give an example, so let's say this is your loan payment. So you put that in there. And again, I'll show you how this all changes at the end here. And then you can also expense travel, but it has to be just for the home. So, you can't just go there and go on vacation. It has to be for repairs, maintenance, something that has to do with maintaining your property. So you can, pay for things like your rental car and gas and your flights and some, types of food, especially if you're taking out, say, your developer or something. But that one you have to really be careful on. That's, but you are allowed to write off costs if it's a full income property. So if it's not your own home, again, talk to your CPA. You're not tax advisors. These are just ways to keep track of stuff. And same thing here. This is meals and, again, only for maintenance and repairs. Okay, so this is not for vacations. This is when you have to actually go to your property and fix it because there's a problem, or whatever, an annual kind of show up and, if it's full-time and you're just never there and you have to go and we just went through winter and you want to make sure everything's good. And then there's just, miscellaneous. So there's always miscellaneous, and this can just be anything, just small little stuff, but it all has to be part of the STR. So what I did down here was I did a little chart, and again, this is not, everybody's going to be totally different. So, you can't base this on this summary. I mean, some people won't have any expenses other than utilities. Maybe they don't need repairs, or maybe they have a ton of repairs because they got a new house. But what this chart does, that you can download, if you go in here and you say, okay, so the whole point of this is your ROI, right? So what I did was I built in some formulas here that says, okay, so if it's booked 25% of the year at $250, right? This is what you'd make. If it's booked at 50%, which is 182 days. This is what you'd make. This is all gross. And then you take your net income that was booked, right? Because this is after your annual expenses right here. So this formula subtracts this out. So if it's only booked for 91 days, you're going to have a negative $18,000 here. I know that doesn't sound good, but you have to understand, I also built in a mortgage payment here of $31,000. So for example, if you didn't have a mortgage payment and you deleted that and made that a zero, then you're going to make $22,750, and that's just 25% of the year. And you'll see how these all bump up as you obviously book out. But if you did have that 31,000, because I know there's a lot of people out there that might be buying a second home specifically, so you're going to have to bake that in, right? But that's not, you can get to a point where, just right here, if it's booked half the year, and again, this is at $250 a night, and this could be, if this becomes, 350, it becomes 31,000, and then you're only down, $8,000, but you're also buying the house. So those are just things to think about, and that's the whole point of this particular episode of our course, is to just kind of play around with the spreadsheet and see, like, okay, how much money can I make if I'm buying a new house or if I already own a house? Depends on your mortgage rate and all those kind of things. And then, like, here's, the second part here is if you didn't have a mortgage, so this is without mortgage expense, right away, even 25% of the year, you're making, $14,000 extra dollars, and that, and you have 75% of the year to use it. And again, this is just based on a $250 price point. I mean, there's, Brittany rents her house for, around probably $500 to $600 a night. So, you bump these numbers up,
and you'll see the difference. I mean, look, $45,000. So all of a sudden, if you don't have a mortgage and you book it 25% of the year, you can make almost $37,000. So just use this as a tool. It's not something that's, this is just the way that we like to look at projects. So definitely use this tool. And then I have this at the very bottom here that says, kind of your current net, and it keeps track of, what is your market price. I mean, you could probably link this to Redfin or, something that kind of keeps track of your property value. And then your loan balance, you could connect that to if you do have a loan. And then it's just a basic math of just subtracting your loan from your current market price. But this is like the really important place right here. So this is where you play around with, what could I get? What's my average? How many days per year am I gonna actually have it booked? And then this whole part we went through earlier it's gonna always vary. It just depends on if you wanna improve your product or, your home. And then, your utilities are gonna change based on how efficient your utilities are. So to wrap this up, I'm gonna go to this final little form here, and this is from my CPA. I've used him for about 20 years here in Los Angeles, and this is basically what when he uses his, built-in tax forms that he fills out. So, and it has multiple properties and all this stuff. And I actually have a spreadsheet for this too, but this is more for you to go to your CPA and figure out how you can take this, and merge it with this. And, these categories here or codes are based on his software program. So don't worry about these codes. But if you look over to the left, you see all of these different categories that you can write off and things like that. So, you can do them all like this, but I like to have a little more breakdown, like when it says auto and travel or advertising, like I like to have a little more detail. So that's why I built this one out, because it kind of breaks down some of those categories. So once you get to the end of the year and, keep all your receipts, that's very important. Or at least, I would suggest getting a separate credit card, especially if it's going to be a full turnkey kind of, second income property. Get a separate checking account and credit card so that everything's on that. And then they can take this and apply it to, their actual filing, and then they'll deal with everything else. But just keep your records, keep them tight. You have to do the revenue estimator right away, find out, what you think you can make, and then go to here and just put in some random numbers. It will autofill everything and just get a realistic idea of what you're getting into. So that's the whole point of the ROI spreadsheet here, and hopefully this helps a lot. I know we reference it a lot in the videos, and you can download any of these documents anytime, and I hope you guys create a great STR, and we'll talk to you soon as you move on to the next videos.
All right, so that is the ROI estimator that we put together. Again, this is just tools to get an idea of what your plans are and put it into perspective. We're not CPAs and tax advisors. We are just here to show you what we use and that what we know works, and you should always contact your advisors for all these things, but hopefully this gives you a general idea of a starting point for your new STR project. And all these files are downloadable, and make sure that you use them. And I think that it'll definitely put some things in perspective so that as you go forward, you don't go over budget or get into a project that you weren't expecting. So we want you to be the most profitable and have the best STR you can make. So we'll We'll talk to you soon in future videos.